Man, I thought that shot was going in, guys. You could see the fear in the Wizards' eyes when DeMar put that shot up. They know what happened last season with that three in the corner that happened on New Year's Day. Probably not the best shot to take there. We all know that DeMar isn't as lethal from three as he is in the mid-range if they had just gone for the tie, but I get it. In these types of moments, probably best to go for the win than a tie, especially when you have another game tomorrow night. Although I say that, but Porzingis had actually fouled out of the game, which would have positioned the Bulls going into OT in a much better place. But either way, it's a shot we've seen DeMar hit before, so I get why it was drawn up, but it's a tough loss because we talked about it before in the offseason. Every game is going to be so critical this year with how good the Eastern Conference is and just how close playoff seeding can come down to the wire once we reach the end of the season. And it's unfortunate because the Wizards aren't one of the better teams in the East, and you'd have to think that if the Bulls had Zach Lavine in this one, that they would have walked away with a win. But anyway, let's talk about this game and some of the key takeaways. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, this is one of those games where as fans, you're frustrated by the loss because for all intents and purposes, the Bulls didn't play well in this game. They fell behind as many as 17 points. They were turning the ball over a lot in the second and third quarter. They couldn't hit their shots. They went on big scoring droughts both in the second quarter as well as the third, where it took them like 4 minutes of play to actually score in the second half. But what was encouraging about this game was that even without Zach Lavine, even despite the fact that they weren't shooting the ball well, they were turning the ball over, the Bulls came back and nearly won this game. They got stops, settled down, started making plays, kept fighting, and got themselves back into the game. You want to see that from your team, where they don't just give up, get their heads low, and take a massive blowout. But despite the comeback, they came up short of an in-and-out three by DeMar DeRozan, which, by the way, did anybody else see the questionable closeout foul on that play? Dude didn't really give DeMar much room to come down, but they're not going to call that in those instances. Very rare for the refs to do that, unless it's blatantly obvious. The things that really stood out to me in this game was outside of Vucevic and DeMar, the Bulls didn't really have much of anyone who could provide consistent offense. Vucevic and DeMar accounted for over half of the Bulls' total points. Only two other players finished in double figures, being Andre Drummond and Coby White, both with 10 each. Now again, if Zach had played, you likely see more offense and that being a little more evenly distributed. But with Zach being out, because presumably this could be the case here and there throughout the season, according to Billy Donovan, that Zach's knee is going to be something that they're going to have to manage throughout the season, depending on his level of pain and discomfort, even though we were told that Zach was fine and that the scope on his knee resolved any issues, but we'll leave that aside for now. But in those instances, other guys have to step up, and that includes guys like Patrick Williams and Dosunmu. I'm not going to harp on Ayo as much because he put up 17 the game before and has still been active on the court and getting shots up, driving to the basket, setting up plays for others. His shots just weren't falling tonight. But for Patrick Williams, I mean, you've got to be putting up more than 5 shot attempts. This is followed up by the last game in which he only took 6 shots. When Lavine and Lonzo aren't in the lineup, Pat should be taking 10 shots at a minimum. I know it's different when Lavine and Lonzo are both playing. He's likely not going to get that many touches, but when guys are out and the Bulls need some offensive production, that's your time to shine, my man. Instead, you saw Pat finishing the game with 7 points and 1 rebound in 24 minutes. And it's not like it's the case where you just say, well, the Bulls have to get him more involved. They got to make plays for him, set up plays for him. To a very small extent, that is true, but the onus lies mainly on Pat himself. If he wants to be more active on offense, he needs to set the tone and be more aggressive, moving without the ball, cutting to the basket, getting in the paint and grabbing offensive rebounds for second chance points. Hell, even just creating his own shot by driving to the basket and taking his man one-on-one instead of just deferring to others and passing the ball up. You know, I was talking about this with Casey Johnson earlier today. Be sure to check out my interview with him if you missed it. I'll leave a link to it on the end screen of this video, but you'd have to think that at some point Billy Donovan is going to make the switch and start Javonte Green over Patrick. Honestly, Javonte fits that starting unit better with his hustle and energy, the fact that he gets after it and attacks early. He fits the high-paced mode the Bulls are trying to play with. And we've also seen how much better Patrick Williams is in playing in that second unit. We saw it in the preseason. We saw it a little last year. There was less pressure on Patrick when he's coming off the bench and playing with guys like Alex Caruso, Coby White, Andre Drummond, because he's not going to get touches taken away from him from guys like DeMar and Zach as he would if he's starting. He would be one of the focal points of offense coming off the bench, and he would be going up against the opposing team's second unit, presumably, and we've seen how well Patrick has done when going up against non-NBA starters. Now, I know some will say, well, that's not really good either. If Patrick is okay going up against reserves, but isn't even competitive against NBA starters, how is that actually going to improve his overall game in general? Well, one step at a time. If this is what it takes to develop Pat and his confidence in the NBA, coming off the bench and playing well against middle-tier NBA players, then so be it. You got to start somewhere, because clearly right now, whatever Patrick is doing is not working for this team. His confidence is clearly shot. He's timid on offense and oftentimes looks lost when trying to assess what to do. And so naturally you have to adjust and figure out how best to maximize his skills, because he is still a very gifted athlete with his size and stature and athleticism. But right now, that just is not being harnessed. And the coaching staff have to figure out how to get the best out of Patrick Williams. Otherwise, yeah, you're looking at a busted number 4 pick if you're not going to focus on his development. Speaking of Javonte Green, though, he's really quieted down after having that stellar preseason. Didn't have a single point tonight and was 0 for 4 from the field. I still love Javonte, though I actually think this is another case in which he does better with the starters than coming off the bench. So I really hope to see that change be made in tomorrow's game, especially now that we know that Zach Lavine will be returning for the home opener. Now, DeMar was incredible in this one as well, despite not hitting the game winner. 32 points, 11 for 23 from shooting, got to the line often, as he always does, was 10 for 11 from the line, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. DeMar is actually already off to a nice start with his assist average, and was the only starter that had a positive box plus minus tonight. In 37 minutes for DeMar, though, I get why you have to do it, especially with no Zach Lavine, and it was a close game, but really hoping that they're able to manage his minutes being in his 14th season, especially right at the beginning of the year. Vucevic had a good game, still hasn't been able to find that stroke, shot 2 for 7 from 3, and he missed a pretty critical 3 with less than 2 minutes to go. That really cost the Bulls to take that lead and probably cost them the game if he would have just hit that shot. But what Vuce did do well tonight was being assertive in the paint and getting to the foul line, and he was perfect from the line at 12 for 12. He finished the game with 24 points and 8 rebounds. What's also been great is seeing Vucevic being more active in snagging boards on offense for second chance points, something we talked a lot about last season, for which he was lacking. Hoping that trend continues, just need to see him shooting the ball better. 5 for 14 still isn't what you want to see from your third offensive option and really second option in these last 2 games. How about Andre Drummond, though? Played 18 minutes, scored 10 points, 10 rebounds, 5 for 6 shooting. I mean, Drummond still kind of does these boneheaded plays where he commits really bad fouls, but say what you will, he's been fighting, playing hard, and the Bulls absolutely needed that from their backup center. So far, this has actually been looking like a great pickup for the Bulls, and the Drummond-Dragic combo has actually been surprisingly entertaining, which I did not expect going into the season. And then Coby White actually had another solid game. He's really improved his handles and taking care of the ball a lot better, whereas last season you would see him turning the ball over a little more frequently. Not only that, he's been more selective with his shots, which is good to see. He was a plus 17 on the night. Overall, from a team perspective, Bulls have to improve their outside shooting. I mean, this has been known. This is not new information. That's why I was harping on the fact that the Bulls didn't bring any shooters over the offseason, which was something they needed the most. But yeah, 7 for 27 from 3. Yes, it doesn't help that you're without your 2 best 3-point shooters in Lonzo Ball and Zach Lavine, but these guys need to be spending more time in practice working on their shooting. Otherwise, their offense is going to be stagnant and watching DeMar do isolation plays. That was the other thing. Ball movement tonight was not good. Less than 20 assists for the Bulls as a whole. I've said it so many times, ball movement is where this team thrives. Pushing the pace, getting out quickly in transition is so key for the squad. Need to see more of it. Hopefully that will improve when Lonzo gets back. Anyway, we're right back at it tomorrow night. Bulls taking on the Cavs, which will be a pretty good matchup with both these teams likely going to be jockeying for playoff positioning throughout the year. I'll have a live chat for the game, and as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.